I took thousands of photos on my iPhone, and everyone keeps asking me, how do I make them so nice? Most people just open the camera app and start shooting, and then they wonder why their photos look so bad. This is the first video in a series where I'll teach you how to take great photos with your iPhone. I'll show you the best settings, the lenses, and the camera modes I use to shoot like this. First, we need to properly set up your camera app. I know this sounds boring, but trust me, this is where the foundation gets built. Open Settings and scroll to Camera. We're gonna go through this together. Formats. Set camera capture on high efficiency. This will keep the size of photos small, and it's great if you have the iPhone with the base storage, like I do. Next, click Photo Mode and make sure it's set to 24 megapixels. You'll have this if you're using iPhone 15 and newer. 24 megapixels will give you the optimal balance of quality and size. And if you have a Pro iPhone, turn on ProRAW and resolution control. If you want to get the most out of your iPhone's camera, shoot RAW. Apple is constantly processing your photos. It's adjusting colors, adding sharpness, crushing shadows, and blowing out highlights. It's making choices for you. ProRAW bypasses all that. It's the raw data coming straight off the sensor. It looks flat and weird in the moment, but in editing you have full control. Always set it to the highest resolution you can for maximum quality and flexibility for cropping. And since we're only talking about photos now, go back one step and switch to Preserve Settings menu. This step is totally optional, but it will just make things easier in the long run. My setup here is super simple. Preserve Exposure Adjustment, Portrait Zoom, and Live Photos. I always have my exposure slightly lowered, and I don't want to change that every single time in camera. Portrait Zoom I need because I take portrait photos at 2x or 3x zoom, and again, I don't want to change it every time. And Live Photos, I just don't like them. They take a ton of space, provide no value for my photo shoots, and just look weird. But you might like them, so who knows? Now, I don't recommend turning on camera mode or creative controls. This will be convenient for dedicated photo shoots, but in real life, you always want to start with the default camera settings and go from there. I also keep depth control off because the phone can do it automatically, and it will do a better job giving all the depth information. The same goes for macro control. Phone will switch to it automatically when you get close to the subject. Night mode too. You can always turn it on in the camera app. Go to the previous menu now and make sure you have these turned on. Grid and Level. Both are extremely useful to have. Grid will help you with framing. These lines you have is what can take your boring photo and with a little magic of framing make it great. And Level will help you make sure your pics aren't crooked, unless you want them to be, of course. Just make sure the line is green and take the shot. Now, photographic styles. If you have an iPhone 16 and newer, this will look a bit different. I have the 15 Pro and it only has these. My choice is rich contrast. It just makes photos a bit more welcoming and warm and a bit more punchy. But for owners of newer iPhones watching this, there's a great video about new photographic style from ZY Cheng. Highly recommend. Almost done with the boring stuff. In main camera, turn on everything and set default lens to 1x. These are not really lenses, but clever processing gimmicks. Also, enable portraits in photo mode so that your phone can take portraits automatically. Do the same for lens correction and lens cleaning hints. These are small things, but they make shooting a bit more comfortable. And if you're watching this and thinking, oh, I have an older iPhone, I'm not sure if this applies to me, go back and watch my iPhone 13 review. I went into detail about how that phone can still take incredible photos. It's not about the hardware being brand new, it's about knowing what you're doing. Okay, settings are done. Let's talk about the camera app itself, because here we only need a few little tweaks. First off, if you have iOS 26 installed, the new interface can be confusing, but it's actually cleaner and better. To change camera modes, you just tap and scroll from side to side here, and to open settings with filters, aspect ratio and the rest, you just tap on Photo. From here we only need exposure and filter. Your iPhone wants to expose for the whole scene. It looks at the bright parts, at the dark parts, and tries to make everything visible. But that's not how professional photography works. You expose for the highlights, you let the shadows go dark, and then you bring them back in editing. So what I do is drag that number down. I'm aiming for about -0.3 to -0.7, depending on the scene. The highlights stay detailed, the shadows stay rich, and you get contrast instead of a washed out iPhone image. And you can quickly access the same settings if you click on the little EV icon in the top left corner. Then there's also the exposure compensation that appears when you tap on a subject and see a sun icon you can drag up and down. This works a bit differently, but more on that later. Let me show you filters first. Most people use these for fun, black and white, vivid colors, whatever. But there's one filter that I actually use for creative learning, not just aesthetics. Noir. That's the black and white filter. Here's a photo I took in Noir just a few days ago. And another one. And another one. Look how moody and detailed the photos look, how much character there is. And I believe the Noir filter is the best way to learn how to take good photos with your iPhone. When you shoot in color, you're relying on interesting colors to make your photos work, and that's easy. But black and white? There's nowhere to hide. If your composition is weak, it's weak. If your framing sucks, it's obvious. So whenever I'm trying to improve my composition or I'm in a boring location, I'll shoot in Noir. It forces me to think about light, shadow, contrast, depth and framing. And honestly, it's made me a better photographer. Plus, Noir photos have this timeless quality. They look intentional. They look like you made a creative choice, not like you just converted your color photo to black and white in your phone. There is something about shooting in a filter from the start versus converting later. It makes you think differently about what you're capturing. And when you go back to color, you'll have a better sense of what actually matters in a frame. This video is part 1, and part 2 is where we actually get into how to compose a photo, how to use these lenses and settings in real life, and how to edit them to make them look professional. You're not gonna want to miss that. Okay, so lens selection is where I'm probably gonna disagree with what most iPhone photography tutorials tell you. Everyone says use the 1X, that's the main sensor, that's the best quality, and yeah, technically they are right. The 1X is the largest sensor, but what nobody talks about is that the zoom lenses, that's what actually gives you creative freedom. I shoot with the 2X or 3X almost all the time, that's my default, and sometimes I zoom even further. The zoom lens gives you a completely different perspective. It compresses your subject into the background, it lets you shoot through elements, it gives you more unusual angles. And here's what's really important, the zoom camera is still a nice sensor. Yes, it's smaller than the 1X, but in normal daylight, the quality difference is negligible, and you're not losing anything that matters. And in return, you're getting creative freedom. And portraits are where these lenses truly shine. The 2X is great for environmental portraits. You get some background context, but still compress things nicely. The 2X is my favorite for portraits. It gives you that beautiful background separation. Faces look natural, not distorted. And if all the stuff that I said is helpful, hit that like button. Seriously, it tells me that these videos are working and that I should make more of them. With the zoom cameras, the compression is flattering, the distance is comfortable, and the background falls away naturally without needing portrait mode to fake it. The lens is doing the real work here, not the phone trying to simulate something it's not. And here's something most people don't know about. When you zoom past your lens's natural zoom level, you're just cropping, and then the phone uses some AI to add details and bump up the resolution. For small jumps like 3x to 5x, the quality difference is minimal, but zooming past that will make photos look fake. I'm almost never using the 1X because the 1X feels limiting to me, it's too wide. But this is personal, and you might prefer the 1X, or you might prefer shooting ultra wide and getting everything in the frame. The point is, don't assume you have to use the 1X just because it has the biggest sensor. Experiment, figure out which lens makes you feel like you have creative freedom, and that's gonna be the lens you should be using. And even the ultra wide has a place. Landscapes, big interiors, architectural shots where you need to show the scale. When you're trying to capture the vastness of a scene. But for everyday photography, I don't reach for it. The distortion is just way too much. It warps your subject and makes everything look smaller and further away than it actually is. And there are times when this is exactly the effect you want, but most of the time you're just fighting it. When I use it, it's mostly for macro shots or for shots like this, or just travel shots that don't have much artistic value. Now we've got the settings dialed in, we know which lenses to use and why. The real difference between a photo that's just nice and a photo that actually stops people is framing and composition. That's understanding how to look at a scene and see a story in it. And that's what the next video in my series is about. We're gonna talk about the rule of thirds, leading lines, foreground and background. Because you can have the perfect settings and use the best lens and nail your exposure, but if your composition composition is weak, your photo is weak. You can't edit your way out of bad framing. So subscribe to the channel to watch the part 2. And if you want me to make a similar guide to shooting videos, let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.